As a leader, have you ever found yourself saying, you know what, I'll just do it myself? I know I have. I am going to give you an alternative to I'll just do it myself, or if you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself. That mentality. And it'll be a game changer for you because it will free up your time, it will cause you a lot less stress, and frankly, the team will thank you for it. I'm Daryl Black of Exigent. I'm here to help you be a better leader, a better teammate, and ultimately a better responder through the art of leadership and the science of human factors. As a fellow responder, as a fellow emergency manager, I am very familiar with high-risk environments and some of the challenges that are faced when you're operating on that front line. I also facilitate training around human factors and leadership all over the world. And trust me, your pain is not unique. This conversation started with an individual, a good friend of mine, on a heavy urban search and rescue exercise that we were participating on quite some time ago. And he was the incident commander, and he found himself, to his credit, he recognized it even in the moment, that he was being very, very detail oriented. And by that, essentially what we're saying is the IC was really deep diving into the operational aspects of this particular scenario. And it's not, just because it's a scenario doesn't mean it doesn't matter, because as we know, you fight like you train like you fight. So what he started to do was really become tactically engaged with regard to the teams in terms of the rescue squads, the search squads, the recce squads, canine, all of those things. Even the logistics, making sure that everybody knew what equipment they needed, all of those other things. Now, there was a command team put into place. There was an operations section chief, a planning section chief, a logistics section chief, and all of the structure that goes along with working within a task force environment. Well, very, very quickly, we started to see, predictably, that the section chiefs were starting to become disengaged, but not disengaged in a negative way, but they just started to now act on their own in vacuum. So we had planning here, ops here, logistics, going to do logistics stuff, so on and so forth. And so nobody stopped working, but everybody was working in a vacuum. The only person that knew exactly what was going on was the incident commander. So he recognized this, as I said, and he course corrected. And to his credit, tremendous self-awareness on his part. He comes from an operational environment, but recognized that he needs to pump the brakes on that and start to think bigger. So he and I, we had a really, really good conversation about it. And he really reached out and said, here's the problem. The person that we did have as a section chief didn't have the technical ability or the technical knowledge to carry out that particular job. And it was a training exercise, so that's the whole idea here. But he quickly deep dived into the operations side and ignored essentially the operations section chief. So he said, he actually didn't have the experience, no fault of his own, but he's new to the team and so on and so forth. And that's why we're training, to get people up to speed. So he's like, man, we've got 70 people waiting. And I didn't want us to wait, so I just kind of went at it. Totally, totally legitimate from his perspective. Now, keeping in mind, he's also being watched. We've got chains of command in place and senior people observing, all these other factors. So I get it. I get it. He also comes from that background. He has that strong operational background, and we have a habit, good or bad, depending, of promoting our operations people. But ops people in particular, strong tacticians, have a tough time disengaging from the tactics and the strategy. So separating those two. So there was some of that to play as well. And then you add in stress. We do what we're comfortable. So you're going to deep dive into the technical parts of the job. So we talked about it, and I put forth maybe a slightly different approach. And that approach was, instead of I'll do this, try let's do this. All right, I'll say that again. Instead of saying I'll do this, say let's do this. And what you're doing as the incident commander or the leader is you are now taking that person with you along the journey. So it's a fantastic opportunity to mentor them in an even more direct and effective way than just letting them kind of sink or swim, which is pretty prevalent in emergency services. So you have the benefit of being able to be quite directive, especially early on in an incident during deployment when it's chaotic, you need a lot of direction. So you still have very much a strong hand in that, but you're mentoring the individual. And herein lies the other advantage. When it comes time to hand off, like totally disengage and hand everything off to the ops chief, you recognize, oh man, I got to disengage from this thing. Well, that ops chief or that team member already is up to speed. They've been with you every step of the way. Now, maybe they haven't been as involved in the decision making, but at least they have a fighting chance. So the irony is, if it's I'll do this, you can't disengage because you're the only one that knows what the hell is going on. So instead of I'll do this, say let's do this. It's a really good opportunity to mentor, and you still can stay involved and you can hand things off even more quickly. It will build a lot more respect as well, because you're telling that ops chief, for example, insert any function here, you're telling that individual, you know what, I respect you enough that I am going to just delegate some tasks off to you or some outcomes to you, and you're going to go ahead and carry those out. So tremendously valuable. Not all do this, but hey, let's do this.